So, I want you to picture something for a second.
Okay, ready.
If you were to draw this, like, weird Venn diagram, right? And you overlay a tense, high-stakes Cold War nuclear standoff with a herd of African impalas, just meticulously grooming each other out on the savannah.
Right.
And then you add a third circle, which is just your local neighborhood chimney sweep.
Oh, I mean, that intersecting middle space just looks completely empty.
Right. On the surface, you really couldn't put three more disparate scenarios into a single bucket.
It definitely sounds like the setup to, like, a bizarre, incredibly niche joke. You expect the punchline to be about mutually assured soot or something.
Yeah, I would laugh at that. But the reality is actually far more fascinating than a punchline.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Because assuming our listeners are, vaguely familiar with the basic concepts of competitive strategy, we usually think of survival, whether that's in nature or in business, as this test of brute force, right? Or sheer resources.
Yeah, the whole survival of the fittest thing.
Exactly. But what if I told you that all three of those scenarios, the nukes, the impalas, the chimney sweeps, they are governed by the exact same invisible, highly rigid mathematical framework?
A mathematical framework. Wait, for all three?
Yes. A specific set of rules that dictates with almost terrifying precision who survives, who scales to massive success, and who just completely self-destructs.
Which brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive. We're analyzing a fascinating stack of sources that basically decode the hidden mathematics of success.
Right.
But our goal here isn't to just rehash academic theories, or whiteboard economics in a vacuum.
Please no.
Yeah, we are looking at game theory,
Yeah.
and specifically how it scales to macroeconomic multi-agent levels.
Huh.
And we want to use it as a highly practical everyday survival guide. We want to extract a blueprint for how you, listening right now, can navigate things like corporate politics, local business competition, and just, well, unavoidable human conflict.
And to really ground this, we need to take it completely out of the theoretical realm and inject it into the real world. And our protagonist for this deep dive is just the perfect vehicle for that. His name is Ray Gessner.
Ray Gessner.
Yeah. Ray is the owner of this wildly successful company called A Step in Time Chimney Sweeps.
A Step in Time. That's a great name. Very Mary Poppins.
Right. And he has a massive online presence. He's got a very popular YouTube channel where he actually trains chimney sweeps from all over the country.
Oh, wow.
But what makes Ray's material so compelling is that his teachings aren't just about, like, the mechanics of using a wire brush or how to inspect a flue.
Okay, so it's not just a technical manual.
Not at all. There is a deeply analytical engine driving his entire operation.
Because, far from your typical tradesman, Ray brings a highly specialized perspective to the service industry.
Right. He's not just a guy with a brush.
Exactly. He is actually a licensed professional engineer.
Which is wild.
Yeah. He holds engineering licensure in multiple states, and he leverages that specific systems-level analytical background to diagnose the exact mechanisms of why businesses and the individuals inside them either achieve market dominance or just collapse completely.
Yeah.
And the sources we're looking at today feature Ray's extensive writing on the power law.
Right, the power law.
Which is that mathematical reality where a tiny percentage of actors produce a massive percentage of the economic results.
Exactly. But to really understand how he harnesses that power law, we have to look at his deepest foundational strategy.
Which is game theory.
Game theory. And more specifically, how game theory maps onto the sheer mathematics of forgiveness.
Which is such a weird combination of words.
It is, but it's a concept deeply tied to Ray's Christian faith. But he applies it here as a ruthless, highly effective algorithm for business survival.
So let's start by examining that intersection, right? The engineer inside the chimney.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because at first glance, the rigorous discipline of professional engineering and the highly localized, gritty work of chimney sweeping, they don't naturally overlap.
They really don't.
But Ray is a Virginia Tech engineering graduate, and he has run his company for almost 30 years.
30 years?
Yeah. In that span, he hasn't just cleaned chimneys. He has personally trained over 400 employees.
That number is just staggering. 400 people.
Yeah, and many of those trainees eventually left to start their own competing chimney sweep companies.
which means he is essentially populating the entire regional industry with his own trainees. He's seeding the market with his specific philosophy.
Right.
And this is where that professional engineer background becomes a massive superpower, because an engineer is explicitly trained to view the physical world through the lens of complex systems.
Uh-huh.
They don't look at a bridge and just see concrete and steel, right?
No, they see failure points.
Exactly. They calculate dynamic loads, tensile resistance, cause and effect cascade failures. So when Ray looks at a chimney sweep company, he isn't just seeing a fleet of trucks going out to scrub creosote off bricks.
Right. He views the company as a complex system of human behaviors.
Yeah.
To an engineer, human incentives are essentially the structural loads of a business.
That's a great way to put it.
And if you ignore the underlying physics of why people do what they do, the organization just collapses under the stress of the free market.
Right.
Exactly the way a poorly designed roof collapses under a heavy snowfall.
Yeah, Ray realizes that managing employees and customers requires the exact same rigorous mathematical modeling as designing a load-bearing physical structure.
And if we look at this through the lens of the power law, it really starts to make sense.
Let's unpack that a bit.
Yeah, so in local service economies, the power law dictates that success is not a normal distribution.
Right, it's not your standard bell curve.
Exactly. It's not a bell curve where most companies do okay, a few go bankrupt, and a few get rich. It's a steep, asymptotic curve.
Meaning a fraction of the companies capture like 80 or 90% of the market share?
Right, and the top-tier talent and the wealth. And Ray argues that this kind of disproportionate success isn't just a byproduct of luck.
Or even just hard work.
Right, it is the result of a compounding feedback loop.
Well, let's break down that mechanism for the listener, because it's fascinating.
Okay.
If a business understands the rules of human interaction better than its competitors, it lowers its customer acquisition cost, right?
Through higher trust and referrals, yeah.
Right. And then that saved capital is redirected into better equipment and higher wages.
Which naturally attracts top-tier technicians.
Exactly. And those top-tier technicians provide better service, which further lowers the acquisition cost.
It's a runaway algorithmic advantage.
Yes, it's the power law in real time.
But mapping out the physics of human behavior, the actual rules of trust, betrayal, and cooperation that fuel that power law, that requires a very specific mathematical framework.
It does.
And to find the origins of that framework, we actually have to look away from local business entirely.
Right. We have to step into probably the most stressful, high-stakes period in modern human history.
We really do. We need to look at the year 1950.
Okay, set the scene for us.
The setting is the Rand Corporation, which was the premier think tank for the United States military.
Right.
And the context is this sudden, terrifying shift in the global power dynamic. Because in 1949, the U.S. detected specific radioactive isotopes in the atmosphere.
Right, specifically yttrium-91 and cerium-141.
Yes, and the presence of those isotopes is the ultimate smoking gun.
Because they have very short half-lives, right?
Exactly. Meaning they couldn't have just drifted from some old, forgotten test. They had to have been produced recently.
So the inescapable conclusion was that the Soviet Union had successfully detonated a nuclear device.
Right. The American nuclear monopoly just evaporated overnight.
Which is terrifying. Suddenly, the world features two superpowers, both rapidly arming themselves with weapons capable of literally erasing civilization.
Just staring at each other across an ideological divide.
And the paranoia was absolute. I mean, there were factions within the U.S. military command actively arguing for a preventative first strike.
Yeah, launching a nuclear attack on the Soviets before they could scale up their arsenal.
Right. And so, to model this unprecedented existential conflict, Rand researchers began heavily utilizing a relatively new concept in mathematics.
The prisoner's dilemma.
Yes. Now, assuming our listeners are vaguely familiar with the classic prisoner's dilemma, the standard Nash equilibrium where rational self-interest drives both parties to mutually destructive defection.
Right, the classic interrogation room scenario.
Exactly. But the real question the Rand Corporation faced was how to scale that math to a macroeconomic multi-agent level.
Yeah, because the terrifying conclusion of a single, isolated game of the prisoner's dilemma is that regardless of what the other person does, strictly rational self-interest dictates that your best possible move is always to defect.
Always. Let's actually, let's break down the classic gold coin scenario for the listener, just so we are all on the same page.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, walk us through it.
Okay, so imagine you and another player are facing a banker,
Yeah.
right? And the banker has a pile of gold coins.
Okay, I'm with you.
If both of you cooperate, you each get 3 coins.
Sounds good.
But if one of you defects, like betrays the other and the other person cooperates, the defector gets 5 coins and the cooperator gets absolutely 0.
Ouch.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you both defect, you both just get 1 coin.
Okay, so the math there is pretty brutal.
It really is.
Because if you cooperate and your opponent defects, you are annihilated. You get 0.
Right.
If you both defect, you both suffer with just 1 coin, but you survive. Therefore, defection is the only mathematically rational choice in a vacuum. You have to defect to protect yourself from the 0.
Exactly. And this wasn't theoretical for Rand. This was the exact reason the United States and the Soviet Union spent an estimated $10 trillion building tens of thousands of nuclear weapons that neither country could ever actually use.
$10 trillion.
Yeah, because to not build nuclear weapons while the adversary built them was to risk the ultimate penalty, the 0.
Total annihilation.
Right. So both nations defected. They built endless, economically draining arsenals. It was a massive, real-world paradox where perfectly rational decision-making led to a terrible, suboptimal outcome for the entire species.
Which brings up the fundamental friction of game theory, right?
Yeah.
If the raw math of a single interaction says we should always defect, always betray the other party to protect ourselves, how does cooperation ever evolve?
That's the million-dollar question.
How does anything good ever happen in nature or business?
Right.
And this is where we pivot from the Cold War and look at the African savanna.
Okay, back to the impalas.
Yes, think about the impalas we mentioned at the start. Impalas are plagued by ticks, right? Which, if left unchecked, cause severe disease and death.
Nasty little things.
Yeah. And since an impala cannot physically reach all the ticks on its own body, they absolutely rely on mutual grooming.
Which is, in biological terms, an economic exchange of services.
Exactly. It's a form of cooperation.
But grooming another impala is highly expensive.
It is.
Oh, yeah. Under the brutal heat of the savanna, grooming costs vital moisture through saliva.
Oh, right. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, it costs electrolytes, it costs energy, and critically, it costs attention. When an impala is grooming a herd mate, its situational awareness drops, making it highly vulnerable to predators.
Wow. Okay. So following the strict mathematical logic of the prisoner's dilemma, an impala should approach a herd mate, allow itself to be groomed, and then when it's time to reciprocate, just simply walk away.
It should defect.
Right. Save its saliva, save its energy, and let the other impala bear the evolutionary cost.
Exactly. Yet observationally, they don't do that.
No, they don't.
They reciprocate, they groom each other. So the mechanism that alters the math completely here is the concept of repeated games.
Repeated games, or, as game theorists call it, the shadow of the future.
The shadow of the future. I love that phrase.
Me too. It's so ominous, but so accurate.
Right, because this is the massive paradigm shift. If you interact with an entity exactly once with no future consequences, the math mandates defection. Take the advantage and run.
Yep.
But biological ecosystems, much like local economies, are rarely single interactions. Impalas see the same herd members day after day.
Mm-hmm.
If an impala defects today, the herd remembers.
They hold a grudge.
They do. The selfish impala gets placed on this biological blacklist. Tomorrow, it receives no grooming, the tick population on its body multiplies, and it eventually dies of tick-borne disease.
Wow.
So when the game is iterated, when you interact over and over again, the math flips. Defection in the present destroys your compounding returns in the future.
And this is the foundational realization that separates the power law winners from the losers in Ray Gessner's worldview.
Yes, bring it back to the chimney sweeps.
Right, because a chimney sweep stepping into a customer's living room is not engaging in a single isolated game.
No.
They are initiating an iterated game. They are playing it with that specific homeowner, they are playing it with their employer, and they are playing it within the broader network of their local community.
The shadow of the future looms large over every chimney inspection.
It really does, because reputations in local service businesses are highly localized and highly sticky.
Oh, absolutely.
If a technician treats a customer as like a one-time mark to be squeezed for a massive unnecessary repair, they might win that single round. They get the high payout today.
Right, they grab the 5 gold coins.
Exactly. But they've defected.
Yeah.
And the customer talks to their neighbors, leaves an online review, and suddenly the company is locked out of that entire neighborhood's future business. Treating the service industry as a series of single-round games is a mathematically guaranteed recipe for long-term collapse.
Okay, but knowing that the game is repeated is only the first step, right?
Right.
The real complexity arises when you try to determine the optimal strategy for playing that repeated game.
Yeah, how do you actually win it?
Exactly. How do you maximize your success when you're surrounded by other players who might be cooperating or who might be actively trying to exploit you?
It's tricky.
It is. And to answer that, we have to look at the seminal event in the history of game theory.
Oh, yes. This is where we jump to 1980.
Okay, take us to 1980.
And we look at the work of a political scientist at the University of Michigan named Robert Axelrod.
Right.
Axelrod wanted to move beyond theory and actually test these concepts empirically. So he hosted a computer tournament.
A tournament for math nerds. I love it.
Basically, he sent out invitations to the world's leading game theorists, economists, mathematicians, sociologists, and he asked them to write computer code, specifically a specific algorithmic strategy for a prisoner's dilemma that would be repeated for 200 rounds against every other submitted program.
And the premise was brilliant in its simplicity, right?
Yeah.
Axelrod loaded all these highly sophisticated strategies into a mainframe, paired them off in a round-robin format, and just let them play.
Let them find it out.
Exactly. The program that accumulated the most total points over the entirety of the tournament would be declared the winner.
And the competitors submitted wildly different philosophies, all translated into code.
Let's look at the mechanics of a few of them because it really shows how differently brilliant minds approach the problem of trust.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
So you had a strategy called Friedman.
Oh, Friedman.
Friedman was the ultimate unforgiving grudge holder.
The worst guy at the party.
Exactly. It would cooperate initially, but if you defected against it even a single time in those 200 rounds, it triggered a permanent defection loop. It would never cooperate with you again.
Wow.
No mercy, no rehabilitation.
It's basically the nuclear option of algorithms.
Yeah.
You make one mistake, or you probe for weakness once, and you are permanently locked into a mutually destructive cycle for the rest of the game.
Exactly. And then you had a strategy called Joss.
Okay, tell me about Joss.
Joss was insidious. It was essentially a sneaky copycat.
Sneaky how?
Well, it would largely play along and mimic your moves, right? But it had a built-in randomization protocol.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Roughly 10% of the time, even if you had just cooperated, Joss would randomly defect.
Just for no reason.
Just to test the waters. It was designed to constantly try to eke out a slight mathematical advantage by occasionally stabbing a cooperative partner in the back.
And the problem with Joss, mathematically, is that it destroys trust cascades.
Right.
Because by injecting unprovoked defection into a cooperative relationship, it forces retaliatory strategies to fire back, which inadvertently burns down its own alliances.
Yeah, Joss was too clever for its own good.
Definitely.
And then there was Grascamp, which took a highly analytical, almost predatory approach.
How did that one work?
Grascamp would play a completely normal cooperative game for the first quarter of the match. But right around the 50th round, it would execute a deliberate, unprovoked defection.
Another probe.
Exactly. It was a probe. It wanted to see how the opponent would react. If the opponent didn't retaliate, Grascamp categorized them as a sucker and would begin exploiting them mercilessly in the late game.
Which is a profound miscalculation against strong algorithms.
Why is that?
Because by probing for weakness, Grascamp often triggered the exact retaliatory collapse it was trying to outsmart.
Ah, right. It woke up the Friedmans of the world.
Exactly.
And finally, you had the heavyweights. There was a program submitted anonymously. We just know it from the records as name withheld.
Sounds mysterious.
It was. And this thing was a beast of computational logic for 1980. It was 77 lines of complex code.
Wow.
It was utilizing predictive modeling, calculating probabilities based on the opponent's historical moves, trying to map out a Markov chain to predict what the opponent would do next and preemptively counter it.
Basically trying to play 4D chess.
Trying to play
4D chess. So you have all of these highly sophisticated, tricky, predictive, and aggressive strategies colliding in the mainframe.
Yeah.
And yet, when the dust settled and the final computational scores were tallied, the winner wasn't the 77-line predictive model.
No, it wasn't.
The winner was the absolute simplest program submitted to the entire tournament. It was literally just a few lines of code.
Just a few lines.
It was called Tit for Tat, and it was submitted by Anatole Rappaport, who's a psychologist and mathematician.
And what blows my mind about Rappaport's Tit for Tat is that it completely abandoned the concept of predictive modeling.
Completely.
Every other coder was trying to forecast the future, but Tit for Tat simply created a mechanical mirror for the past.
Right.
Its logic gate was incredibly basic.
Yeah.
On the very first move of the game, it defaults to cooperation.
Okay.
On every single move after that, it just copies whatever the opponent did on the previous turn.
If you cooperated with it, it cooperated with you.
Simple.
If you defected, it immediately defected on the next turn. But, and this is the crucial distinction from the Friedman strategy, if you defected but then realized your mistake and went back to cooperating, tit for tat immediately forgave you.
Oh, that's huge.
It wiped the slate clean and returned to mutual cooperation on the very next turn.
It's like algorithmic karma.
Exactly.
But Axelrod didn't just announce the winner, he actually analyzed why tit for tat won.
Yeah, the data analysis is the best part.
He dissected the data and found that all the top-scoring strategies in the tournament, despite their variations, shared 4 distinct mathematical traits. And when you read these 4 traits, they sound less like computer science and more like a stoic philosophy for just being a decent human being.
They absolutely do. Let's define those 4 traits because they form the operational core of the winning formula.
Let's do it.
Trait number 1. The highest scoring algorithms were all mathematically defined as nice.
Nice.
And in game theory, nice isn't about politeness. It has rigid definition. A strategy is nice if it is never the first one to defect. It never initiates the betrayal. It always enters a new relationship with a baseline of trust.
Okay, trait number 2. They were forgiving.
Right.
They didn't fall into the Friedman trap of permanent grudges. If an opponent defected but subsequently attempted to reestablish cooperation, a forgiving strategy would allow it.
It mathematically recognized that letting past sins ruin future compounding returns was just irrational.
Exactly. It absorbed the initial loss to reset the cooperative matrix.
Okay, trait number 3. They were retaliatory.
Oh, so they weren't pushovers.
Not at all. This is the vital counterbalance to being nice. Being nice in a mathematical sense does not mean being a passive victim.
Right.
If an opponent defected, tit for tat struck back immediately with 100% certainty on the very next turn. It established immediate unyielding boundaries. It signaled to the ecosystem exploitation carries a mandatory and immediate cost.
Love that. And finally, trait number 4, they were clear. They were highly legible to the other players.
Legible. I like that word for it.
Yeah. Think about name withheld and its 77 lines of predictive code. The critical failure of name withheld wasn't its objective, but its complexity.
Because by constantly shifting its behavior based on internal probability matrices, it became fundamentally unpredictable to its opponents.
Exactly. And in an iterated game, unpredictability generates friction.
Yeah.
If an opponent can't figure out your pattern, they assume you are dangerous. They stop trusting you, and they default to defection just to protect themselves.
Right. They go for the safe bet.
But tit for tat was completely transparent. After 3 rounds, every opponent knew exactly how it operated. There was no asymmetric information.
Now, before we translate this all into business, there is a brilliant historical Easter egg in this data that brings our narrative full circle.
Oh, I love an Easter egg. What is it?
So, in Axelrod's first tournament, the strategy that came in second place, scoring just fractions of a point behind Rappaport's tit for tat, was a variation submitted by a pair named Tideman and Chiaruzzi.
Okay.
And Nicholas Tideman was a professor of economics at Virginia Tech.
Wait, really? Which is Ray Gesner's alma mater.
Exactly.
He's a Virginia Tech engineer. So this fundamental truth of game theory, partially championed by a mind from his own university, becomes the exact blueprint for his life's work.
Full circle.
That is amazing. So Ray takes these 4 traits, nice, forgiving, retaliatory, and clear, and he stripped away all the academic jargon. He maps them directly onto the operational manual for a fleet of chimney sweeps.
Because a chimney sweep company is the ultimate laboratory for applied game theory.
Oh, for sure.
You have high-friction variables, physical manual labor, employees operating independently inside the private sanctuaries of customers' homes.
Stringent life safety protocol.
Yes. And aggressive local competitors. Let's look at how Ray translates Axelrod's 4 traits into his 4 core keys for business survival.
Right. Key number 1 for Ray is the level of being nice. And Ray is very deliberate in stating that being nice isn't a soft skill, it's a hard asset.
Explain that.
Well, think about the friction of the chimney business. A homeowner is letting a stranger covered in soot walk into their living room.
Yeah, it's inherently invasive.
To inspect a structural element that, if neglected, could literally burn their house down or cause carbon monoxide poisoning, the baseline anxiety is massive.
Absolutely.
If the office staff is accommodating, if the technician is respectful, That niceness reduces the emotional friction.
Yeah.
It establishes the baseline matrix for cooperation, significantly lowering the customer acquisition cost, because that customer is now primed to trust the assessment and refer the company to their neighbors.
Okay, and key number 2 is the level of being forgiving.
The Christian influence, right?
All right, Ray has noted that this is his favorite principle, heavily informed by his worldview, but it is also brutally pragmatic business math.
How so?
In a complex system, human error is inevitable. A trainee is going to fail a certification exam. An office manager is going to mishandle a scheduling route.
A technician might misdiagnose a minor masonry issue.
Exactly.
Mhm.
If Ray operates like the Friedman strategy, if he demands zero-defect perfection and fires anyone who makes a mistake, he destroys his own human capital.
Because the cost of recruiting and training a new employee is astronomical.
Yes. Forgiveness is the mechanism that absorbs the friction of learning. It provides the space necessary to turn a rookie who made a mistake into a highly loyal, tenured veteran.
That makes total sense. Key number 3 is the level of being transparent, which is the direct translation of the game theory trait of being clear.
Right.
In home services, there is a massive asymmetry of information. The technician knows exactly what a cracked terracotta flue looks like. The homeowner has absolutely no idea.
Yeah, to the homeowner, it's just a dark hole.
Exactly. If a technician simply walks downstairs and says, "Your chimney is dangerous, you owe me $1,000, the homeowner instantly feels vulnerable and suspicious. It feels like a shakedown.
Oh, for sure.
Transparency bridges that gap. Ray insists on showing the customer photos from inside the chimney. He explains the exact pricing structure. He provides tier-level options for repair.
He makes the rules of the game completely visible.
Yes, eliminating the unpredictability that triggers customer defection.
And finally, key number 4, the level of self-defense.
The retaliatory strikes.
Exactly. This maps perfectly to the trait of being retaliatory. And this is the failure point for so many well-intentioned entrepreneurs.
Because they think being nice means being a pushover.
Right. They believe that being a nice company means absorbing abuse from bad clients or looking the other way when employees cut corners.
Yeah.
Ray teaches that without rigid written policies, without legally binding contracts, and without the absolute willingness to fire toxic actors or litigate against dishonest competitors, a nice company is just a target-rich environment for predators.
You must have a retaliatory shield to protect the cooperative core of the business.
Exactly.
And alongside these 4 keys, Ray acts as a systems diagnostician, warning his sweeps to identify 3 specific behavioral variables in the people they interact with.
These are the human elements that introduce destructive friction into the system, right?
Yes. Variable 1 is deceptiveness.
Okay.
This is the sneaky player. The technician who smiles in the morning meeting but secretly does side jobs for cash on the weekends using the company's equipment and insurance.
Ah, the Joss strategy.
Exactly. They present as cooperative, but they are secretly siphoning equity out of the system.
Wow. And variable 2 is what Ray defines as the kingmaker.
Oh, I'm curious about this one.
This is a highly nuanced observation of corporate politics. The kingmaker is an employee whose primary loyalty is not to the mission of the company or to the customer, but to power itself.
Interesting.
They map out the internal hierarchy, identify who is rising in influence, and attach themselves to that person through flattery and alignment.
Right.
If the power dynamics shift, the kingmaker instantly abandons their previous ally and aligns with the new power center. They are playing an entirely different zero-sum game inside the cooperative structure,
Yeah.
acting purely for their own positional advantage.
That is toxic. And variable 3 is loyalty, but Ray is quick to strip away the romanticism of the word right.
Yeah, true loyalty, in his matrix, is only ever proven under stress.
Because it is easy to simulate loyalty when the schedule is full and the bonus checks are clearing.
Oh, absolutely.
But what happens when a competitor offers a technician $2 more an hour to jump ship? Or what happens when a major installation goes terribly wrong and the customer is threatening a lawsuit?
Right.
Loyalty is the deliberate choice to maintain the long-term, iterated game of cooperation, even when a short-term defection offers an immediate lucrative payout.
Okay, so all of this, the 4 keys, the variables of human behavior, it forms a highly robust theoretical framework.
Yeah.
It looks pristine on a whiteboard.
Yeah, it does. But I have to challenge this, though.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because it's one thing to run a computer simulation at the University of Michigan where all the agents are governed by predictable logic gates.
Sure.
It's entirely different in the cutthroat, hyper-local world of small business. Tit for tat assumes a rational opponent who eventually wants to maximize points.
Right.
But what happens if you encounter an irrational actor? What if a competitor has deep pockets, deep resentment, and is literally willing to absorb massive financial losses just to bleed you out?
That's a scary thought.
Does a strategy of being nice and forgiving actually hold up when someone is actively trying to destroy your livelihood and your rent is due?
That isn't a hypothetical edge case, by the way.
Oh, really?
That exact scenario happened to Ray early in his career. It serves as the ultimate real-world stress test of his entire game theory philosophy.
Well, then let's dive into it. Let's talk about the $2 million defection.
Set the stage.
The year is 1998. Ray Gessner is just getting a step in time off the ground. He is the new player entering a mature market.
Okay.
And in his specific geographic territory, there is a highly established heavy hitter competitor. We are talking about a company that has been entrenched for 20 years. They have institutional relationships, massive market share, and deep pockets.
Okay, so a massive Goliath to his David.
Exactly. Ray enters the ecosystem and he immediately applies key number 1. He plays nice.
He cooperates.
Yes. He doesn't launch aggressive attack ads against the established company. Instead, he initiates cooperation. At the time, Ray's company wasn't focusing heavily on gas fireplace jobs. They were focusing on sweeping and masonry.
Okay.
When Ray received calls for gas work, he didn't just turn them down, he actively referred them to the 20-year competitor.
Wow, he was handing them revenue?
Yes. He was signaling to the market and to his competitor that he was a cooperative, non-zero-sum player.
And for a while, the ecosystem is stable. But Ray's underlying algorithms are highly efficient. A step in time starts scaling rapidly. His compounding returns kick in.
He's hiring technicians, buying more trucks, expanding his routing.
Suddenly, the established competitor looks at the market dynamics and stops seeing Ray as a friendly source of referrals. They start seeing him as an existential threat to their market dominance.
So they decide to defect.
And the nature of the defection was incredibly aggressive. It wasn't just undercutting Ray's prices.
No.
At this point in his growth, Ray had built a robust staff, and he had ensured that roughly 90% of his technicians were officially certified by the national trade organizations.
Which is high for the industry.
Very high. However, he had one single new technician who had not yet completed the certification process.
One guy.
One guy. The competitor discovered this minor operational gap. And leveraging their immense industry influence, the attacking competitor was actually a former president of major chimney sweep organizations that reported Ray for an ethics violation.
Oh, that is brutal. They weaponized the regulatory bureaucracy against him.
Yes, they did.
Because of that single uncertified technician out of a massive staff, this established competitor successfully engineered a ruling that banned Ray from the major chimney sweep organizations for 3 full years.
3 years.
In a trust-based service industry, being publicly blacklisted by the national trade organizations is a devastating blow. It cripples your credibility, your networking, your ability to attract top talent.
In the language of Axelrod's tournament, the competitor played nasty. They initiated a severe defection to cripple a rising player.
Right.
Now, if Ray was merely a nice guy without the structural backbone of engineering and game theory, he would have absorbed the blow, accepted the ban, and likely watched his business slowly suffocate.
But remember, trait number 3 of the winning algorithm,
Good.
retaliatory.
Yes. Ray's fourth key is self-defense.
He activates the shield.
Okay.
And he doesn't just send a strongly worded cease and desist letter.
Yeah.
By filing a massive lawsuit, Ray essentially reverses the kinetic energy of the attack. He takes the regulatory pressure the competitor applied and turns it into overwhelming financial leverage.
He sued them.
Ray sues the competitor for $2 million.
Consider the psychological weight of that number in 1998 for a local service business.
Yeah.
$2 million isn't a slap on the wrist. It is an extinction-level event.
Ray takes them to court, and they hit the first major legal hurdle, a motion to dismiss, or the preliminary hearings, and Ray wins it.
He won the first round.
The judge examines the evidence, validates that Ray has a legitimate cause of action likely surrounding tortious interference or antitrust behavior, and allows the lawsuit to proceed to the discovery phase.
So suddenly, the dynamics of the game completely invert.
Totally.
The established competitor realizes they haven't just squashed a bug, they have triggered a landmine. They are now staring down the barrel of a $2 million judgment that would force them into bankruptcy.
The defector is suddenly experiencing the severe mandatory cost of their defection, tit for tat in action.
Right. But this is the moment where the story diverges from standard corporate warfare. This is the climax of Ray's strategy, and it's a move that most cutthroat business owners would find just incomprehensible.
Right before the next major phase of the trial, with the competitor facing massive legal bills and the looming threat of destruction, Ray picks up the phone.
He calls them.
He calls his opponent directly, and he offers him the one thing the opponent has zero leverage to demand: forgiveness. Ray literally uses that concept. He tells the competitor, "If this hostility is over, if you are completely done attacking me and my business, I will drop the lawsuit."
Yeah, they agreed.
The competitor, likely in a state of profound relief and shock, agrees to the terms of peace. And true to his word, Ray drops the $2 million suit. He walks away from the kill shot.
To a purely aggressive mindset, this looks like weakness. Why surrender your leverage when you have your enemy pinned?
Exactly.
But through the lens of game theory, this is the absolute pinnacle of strategic mastery.
Break that down for me.
If Ray pursues the lawsuit to the bitter end, he might destroy the competitor, but at what cost? He would spend years locked in depositions, draining his own capital, his emotional energy, and his operational focus.
Right.
Furthermore, he signals to the rest of the local market that he is a destroyer. By dropping the suit, Ray achieved two massive objectives simultaneously. He proved his self-defense was lethal. He demonstrated the absolute capacity and willingness to destroy anyone who defected against him.
The teeth of the algorithm.
Exactly. But crucially, he immediately returned to cooperation the very millisecond the defection ceased.
He avoided becoming the freedman strategy.
Yes.
He avoided becoming the grudger who burns the whole forest down just to kill one wolf. He established the boundary, absorbed the friction, and then hard reset the algorithm back to zero.
But understanding why this is so vital requires us to look at a crucial nuance in game theory, a factor that separates sterile computer simulations from the chaos of reality.
What's that?
In Atzerod's mainframe, the code was perfect. If a program defected, it was a deliberate binary choice. But the real world is messy. In applied game theory, there's a highly dangerous variable known as noise.
Noise, yes.
Yeah.
In human interaction, a cooperative move can often look like a defection purely by accident.
Right.
It's a dropped phone call, a lost email in a spam filter, a tone-deaf text message, or a technician accidentally parking his truck on the neighbor's prize-winning rose bush.
Yes.
It's unintended friction.
Exactly. And to truly grasp the apocalyptic danger of noise in a rigid system, we have to revisit the Cold War. Specifically, one of the most chilling, consequential moments in human history.
Oh, man. It's September 1983.
Take us there.
The tension between the U.S. and the Soviets is at a boiling point. A Soviet lieutenant colonel named Stanislav Petrov is the duty officer inside Serpukhov 15, which is the secret bunker monitoring the Soviet Union's Okosasai early warning system. In the middle of his shift, the system alarms trigger. The screens flash red. The satellite reports that the United States has launched an intercontinental ballistic missile from a base in the U.S.
A nuclear launch.
Moments later, the system detects a second launch, then a third, a fourth, and a fifth. 5 nuclear missiles heading straight for the Soviet homeland.
And if Petrov is operating strictly as a rigid tit-for-tat algorithm, the math is undeniable.
The U.S. defected.
Right. The United States has initiated a massive defection. The algorithm dictates immediate mandatory retaliation. His explicit orders are to pass the data up the chain of command, which would almost certainly trigger a full-scale Soviet nuclear launch in response.
But Petrov hesitates.
Thank God.
Yeah. He looks at the data matrix, and his human intuition flags an anomaly. Why would the United States start a preemptive nuclear war with only 5 missiles? It made zero strategic sense. A genuine first strike would involve hundreds of missiles to cripple the Soviet response.
Right, 5 is just weird.
Operating purely on a hunch and going against every rigid protocol in the Soviet military doctrine, Petrov dismisses the alarm. He reports it up the chain as a false system malfunction.
He was right.
He was entirely correct. The OCO satellite had misread the data. It had confused the high-altitude reflection of sunlight off the tops of clouds for the thermal bloom of a missile launch.
It was pure noise, a mathematical artifact in the sensor array.
Yeah.
Now extrapolate that. If a strict, unforgiving tit-for-tat algorithm had been hardwired into the launch controls, sunlight hitting a cloud would have been interpreted as a defection, and the world would have ended in thermonuclear fire.
Wow.
In a noisy environment, strict tit-for-tat is actually incredibly fragile. It leads to endless death spirals of retaliation. You step on my toe by accident, I punch you in the face in retaliation. You stab me in response, and we both bleed out on the floor over a clumsy footstep.
So how did the mathematicians solve for the thermal blooms of daily life? How do they account for noise?
They evolved the algorithm. Post-tournament analysis revealed that to survive in a noisy world, you have to upgrade to what game theorists call generous tit-for-tat.
Genesis for tat.
You have to program a specific mathematical tolerance for error. You need to be roughly 10% more forgiving than strict retaliation demands.
Okay, so how does that play out?
Instead of striking back every single time you perceive a defection, you only retaliate 9 out of 10 times. You let one slide.
You intentionally absorb a minor loss.
Yes. To give the system a margin of error to correct itself before initiating a death spiral.
You literally program grace into the algorithm, which brings us right back to the chimney sweeps and Ray Gessner.
Right.
Ray forgiving that competitor and dropping the $2 million lawsuit wasn't just him turning the other cheek to be a martyr, it was the flawless execution of generous tit for tat.
He recognized that if he fully embraced the grudger mentality, he would spend the next decade trapped in a legal and emotional death spiral with one single entity.
The grudger is inherently backward-looking. The grudger is obsessed with litigating the past and winning the argument. Ray's algorithm is entirely forward-looking. He wanted to win the future.
Exactly.
By forgiving that competitor and severing the chain of retaliation, Ray freed up massive reserves of mental bandwidth and financial capital. He took the energy he would have spent destroying one company and used it to build an absolute army of cooperative relationships.
He spent his time traveling across Virginia, networking, training young sweeps, and scaling his own operations.
And the epilogue to this specific story is just the ultimate validation of the underlying mathematics.
What happened?
That 40-year established company, the one with all the institutional power and the deep pockets that tried to crush him in 1998.
Yeah.
It no longer exists. They eventually folded. In fact, if you go to a browser right now and type in the web address of that old aggressive competitor, the domain automatically redirects to a step in time chimney sweeps. It points straight to Ray's company.
Oh, that is poetic.
Isn't it?
The cooperative algorithm fundamentally outlasted the grudger. The competitors spent their operational energy trying to extract value by destroying others, and eventually, the local market recognized the toxicity of that friction.
Oh, right.
Ray spent his energy building a low-friction network of trust, and the compounding returns of the power law rewarded him with the entire territory.
Which brings us to a profound paradigm shift. This story reveals a fundamental flaw in how most of us define what it means to actually win in business or in life.
It does. And this is the final and arguably the most counterintuitive lesson extracted from Robert Axelrod's computer tournaments.
Let's hear it.
When you review the final aggregate scorecards, Anatol Rappaport's tit for tat won the entire tournament. It accumulated the highest total points.
Right.
But if you dig into the granular data and look at the individual head-to-head matchups, tit for tat never actually defeated a single opponent it played against.
I want to make sure I'm hearing that right. It won the entire global tournament, but it never actually won a single individual game.
Exactly. It is mathematically impossible for tit for tat to win a head-to-head matchup.
Because it just copies.
Think about the logic gate. It only ever copies the opponent. If you cooperate, it cooperates, and you both extract the exact same 3 points. It's a tie.
Okay.
If you defect, it defects back on the next turn, and you both extract the same low 1 point. Another tie. The absolute best outcome tit for tat can possibly achieve in a one-on-one scenario is a draw. It cannot beat you.
So how on earth does a program that only fights to a draw win the championship?
Because it understands the true nature of the ecosystem. Life, the chimney sweep business, your corporate career, these are not games of chess.
They are not poker.
Exactly. They are not zero-sum environments where my victory intrinsically requires your defeat. In a non-zero-sum game, you do not get your points by extracting them from the player sitting across from you. You extract your points from the banker.
Ah. And the banker is the environment itself.
The banker is the free market. The banker is the local community. The banker is the total available capital in the ecosystem.
Precisely. Tit for tat won the tournament because while all the aggressive, sneaky programs like Joss and Grasscamp were busy stabbing each other in the back, triggering endless retaliatory death spirals, and scoring 0 points,
Right.
Tit for tat simply found the other nice programs. It linked up with the cooperators, and they just sat there round after round, peacefully cooperating, quietly pulling endless coins out of the banker's vault.
That is incredible. They built what evolutionary ecologists refer to as islands of cooperation.
Islands of cooperation.
In complex computer simulations, Even if you start with an environment that is 99% populated by selfish, backstabbing, predatory actors, if you can establish just a tiny, geographically isolated cluster of cooperators, a little island of entities playing tit for tat, they will thrive.
Because they aren't wasting energy on friction and defense.
Exactly. They accumulate so much wealth and resources from the environment that their strategy eventually reproduces, expands, and completely overtakes the selfish population.
And that is the exact blueprint of what Ray Gessner built in Virginia. He didn't try to conquer the market by bleeding his competitors dry. He started his own small island of cooperation.
Right.
He referred jobs when he couldn't take them. He uploaded training videos to YouTube for free. He treated his employees with forgiveness. And he built massive goodwill. Over 30 years, the compounding math of that island grew so large that it simply swallowed the grudgers whole.
So bring this all the way back to you, the listener, right now.
Yeah, how does this apply to you?
It doesn't matter what your specific domain is. Whether you are leading a cross-functional corporate team, whether you are dealing with a nightmare neighbor who keeps inching their fence over your property line, or whether you are just trying to navigate the complex dynamics of your own extended family.
The math is the same.
The underlying mathematical blueprint for long-term success is exactly the same as it is for a guy cleaning soot out of a brick chimney.
You have to be kind enough to initiate cooperation and establish trust.
You have to be strong enough to deploy immediate boundaries when someone attempts to exploit you.
You have to be mathematically wise enough to offer true forgiveness the moment the attack stops.
And you have to be patient enough to let the compounding returns of the banker outlast the grudgers.
If we are going to leave you with one final practical thought to dissect today, it is this. Take a hard look at the ongoing conflicts currently draining energy in your own life.
Yeah. Are you locked in a mutual death spiral of retaliation with someone?
A passive-aggressive coworker, an estranged sibling, a rival manager.
If you are, take a step back and ask yourself, is it possible that this entire war didn't start with deliberate malice, but was a misunderstood signal?
Was the inciting incident just a piece of random noise in the system that accidentally triggered your retaliatory shield?
A reflection of sunlight on a high-altitude cloud that you mistook for a missile launch?
Exactly. And more importantly, what would happen if, just for one round, you consciously applied generous tit for tat?
What if you actively chose to offer a 10% margin of grace, voluntarily absorbed a minor hit to your ego, and forced the entire algorithmic game to reset?
The mathematics of game theory suggests that extending that single olive branch might just be the most profitable, high-yield move you ever make.
It is the ultimate shortcut to being well-informed and, quite frankly, well-lived.
That concludes our deep dive into the calculus of game theory, the compounding force of the power law, and the surprisingly cutthroat, highly philosophical world of chimney sweeps. Thank you for joining us as we explored the invisible, rigid math that secretly governs the chaos of our world. We'll catch you on the next one.